So I think it is live streaming now. So I'll just ask Trisha if she can confirm that. So while we're doing that, I'd like to welcome Bronwen Vearncombe. How do you
Vearncombe.
Vearncombe.
Vearncombe. Yeah,
it's
two syllables.
It's one of those things you can pronounce different ways depending.
Absolutely.
This is the official way. You heard it from first. So it's lovely to see. This is the first time we've actually I think we've chatted on the phone, haven't we? But we haven't.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we have.
So
nothing
great
than face to face.
Yes, it's great to see you. And of course, you are in Zanzibar at the moment.
I'm in Zanzibar in Tanzania. Yes, that beautiful, beautiful tropical island off the northern coast.
Even though when you phone me up, it says you're calling from Southampton.
It does, because I know how to use my technology, so it doesn't cost you and it doesn't cost me. So yeah, there are ways.
That's great. So it's lovely to see you. So first of all, I will just say a few words about you. So I know that you have written a book, which I have actually purchased on Kindle. And you also, the book is called Building Your Dream Life, and the subtitle is How Property Can Help You Quit the Rat Race. And you've also got a website, Property Investing Foundation, and so on. And you've basically, so you used to be in the corporate world as a banker, didn't you? And then within 2 years, you, with your husband, you did Sam Zucchi's mastermind program, and then you were able to first do these incredibly profitable deals yourself, and then you started working with, well, I think the first one you were working with investors, weren't you? And then you started just working with other people, and then training people, and so this is your lifestyle now, sort of traveling the world and doing property stuff, which is amazing.
So we've got different businesses. So it's interesting how over time the property world sort of changes as you become more knowledgeable. It's pretty much 4 businesses really, plus my pension. So we've got HMO's sort of residential business. We've got holiday lets, guest houses, short-term accommodation business. We have the development business. We build from scratch, or we do new builds. And then we've got my education business, which is helping other people learn and sharing some of the stuff that we've picked up over the years. It's great fun.
So you've got sort of HMOs, and then you've got serviced accommodation, holiday lets, and then you do the developments, and then you do your coaching and training. They're your 4. And you've also got pension as well.
And my SAS pension,
SAS pension, which is used as a sort of device to help manage things more efficient from the tax point of view, because you're putting stuff into your pension tax-free, and then you can use that money to use investment in some of your deals and developments. SAS has been a revelation to me, really. It's given us flexibility as well within our property business, but it's also been incredibly rewarding and I suppose a lot of responsibility with managing what I transferred from my banking pension. So I was 21 years in Lloyds Bank at quite a senior level in the end. So I had quite a big pot, a defined benefit pot. So it took me a while to make a decision to transfer it and to take that responsibility and manage it myself. So it's really, really good. Because most people don't realize, most people with pensions don't realize that it could be a potential gold mine. I mean, some pensions aren't worth very much, but others, if it's a final salary scheme, it could be worth a lot of money. And the way it's if you invested in property, you could potentially earn more money or grow it at a faster rate using your skill as a person.
Exactly, because I everybody's situation is different, and I am not a pensions advisor, so I don't advise anybody in this field. However, for me, you know, in my situation, that pension has got a very high transfer value. But equally, you've got to make sure that, you know, you understand the risks, and you've got to understand what your critical yield is. So the yield that you would be getting if you left it where it was. And my critical yield with my Lloyds Bank pension was 5% per annum. So if I left it there, that's roughly what I would get. If, you know, if indeed the bank continued to perform and it didn't make big decisions on its pensions, which it could do, as we know other large organizations have done. So actually you're not hugely in control of your pension, but it was a defined benefit. So it, you know, it is an attractive thing. So I had to make sure that I knew myself that I had the capability and could apply to HMRC for the authority to manage it myself. And it's no mean feat. But what I can do with it is huge. You know, I can borrow up to half of it into my sponsoring company. So by borrowing it, I pay it back over a number of years. So at a quite a low rate of interest. So gives me lots of choices.
So it's definitely something to look into. So first of all, I'd like you to we've got a lot to cover today, because I definitely would like to learn your system, the Bronwen system. Abbreviated, of course, because you can't sort of, you know, give us everything. But before we get on to that, if you could just briefly, I mean, here you are now, living the dream, but obviously you didn't just get there overnight. There was various steps you took, and presumably if you did it now, you'll do it differently. So, but I was just briefly, just say what were the steps you did actually take to get from doing a normal job in the corporate world. What did you do to get to where you are now?
I have a PowerPoint slide.
Go on.
I'm not going to go through all. Maybe
it's not going to be
go through all the slides.
It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. No,
it won't. I'm just going to show a few to begin with, and then as our conversation develops, I might say, look, I've got an example. So I've got some case studies and things. But as we chat, I might say, look, let me share my screen and I'll show you. Okay, because that's what makes the difference. And I'm a very visual person, so. If I was listening to this and I was able to be viewing it, not on just a podcast, then I probably just want to see the slides. But I'll talk to them so that it doesn't matter if you're not actually viewing them.
So I've made you co-host, so right. To share whenever you like.
Okay, here we go. Right, can you see that all right?
I can, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to go on to the big screen and go here. So yeah, this is property enabling freedom, and I think that's the word for me that's always stuck with me right from day one. Was how did we make sure that we were able to create that freedom so that we didn't have to replace our jobs with another job called property management or property stress, and of course it has been stressful, but I just want to give people an idea of where we are at the moment. So this is Zanzibar, and just because I'm in Zanzibar doesn't mean to say I'm not working, but if you're able to watch this, you can see the color of the water. My beach is just over there. Where I am now, I'm renting a house at the moment. I have a pool here, and the beach is literally that picture on the top left. That's 30 seconds walk away, and that's John, my husband, in that photograph. And it's just such a beautiful place here. The color of that water is stunning, and I'm able to live here and work here, just managing all my property income. And we've got a development out here, so we've expanded our business now into the 5th business, which is J&B Property Zanzibar. There we go. Here's us doing a bit of yoga. On the right hand side, we're going scuba diving, so it's a new skill I've learned over the last few months. But yeah, we've been out here for a few months now, and certainly during COVID it was a very nice place to be. So let's move on. Who am I? So this is what you were asking about. Where am I? What did I do? So I was that corporate slave.
Strong words, corporate slave. Yeah, and I think many of us have felt like that or feel like that.
Indeed, now. Indeed. I was commuting 7 till 7, if I was lucky.
Yeah.
you know, I was commuting up to London. At one point I was working on the Isle of Wight, and I commuted 4 days a week to the island. And the catalyst was when I was told I couldn't take my pension until I was 67, my full pension. And for me, I'm like, 67, that's madness. My father retired early at 55, and I had no intention of working beyond that if I could help it. So it made me sit up and think, how can I do something that's still going to give me time, that isn't just going to be another job where I've got to be sitting at a desk or a computer 24/7. So that was the catalyst. And that was the middle of 2013 when I was told that, when I thought, right, okay, I need to do something different. And then today, yeah, we've got time. We've got time and income from property rentals. We talked about SaaS in 2017. So if you take, you know, we did a course with Simon Zucchi's mastermind program in 2014.
I think you did it about a year after I did it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, you know, that's like good 10 months, 12 months of learning. John and I both did it. And then we were hosting for Southampton Pin, and then I taught mastermind for a little bit locally for Simon. You know, we were right in the throes of it. But what we learned from Simon early on was never create another job. So whenever we were doing our deals, it was always really important that we didn't manage our properties. So when we started, we were working full time for pretty much the first 2 years. John gave up his after the first year. And then, don't manage any property. So it was very easy when we did our deals, we had to find somebody that was good enough, you know, preferably an investor themselves, who could manage the properties on our behalf, so that we could move on to do the next one.
I mean, I find, I agree with you. I think managing properties, I know some people do that to save money, and it does save a little bit of money, but it does add a lot of stress, because people can get emotional, tenants can get emotional, you know, when things go wrong, and that can really affect you. And also, sometimes I've been in the situation where I've been in a situation where I've been forced to sell a property, and I knew that I would have to evict the tenants, but I'd met them. I'd gone around the house and I'd had a cup of tea with them, and they're really nice, and we're really friendly. And I just felt so horrible, you know, having to evict them. And so having this manager in between you, it just sort of insulates that from all this sort of difficult emotion.
You've got to find the right person. You do need to find the right. And it isn't high street agents. We don't use high street agents. We did at the beginning, but we don't, because they don't really understand.
You have to manage. You can't just leave them to it, because unfortunately you can't trust that people don't always do what they say. Because I had these ones, and they said they were going to inspect it every 3 months, and they didn't inspect it, and they both got turned into cannabis factories. So you have to make sure you keep on.
And I've had one of those, but that was before I bought it. So HMOs particularly, you know, it's so important that you've got the right mix of people in a house of multiple occupation, and you need a specialist person who knows how to manage the people and the contracts. And to make it a happy house. That's really important. So by not managing, I've never met any of my tenants. So and I know if I had, I would be like you know, because I like people, and I want to provide good quality places for people. So that's a big driver for me. But you know, I think for me, it was all about finding the right people to manage it. And that's where our relationship is. It's with those individuals who manage our properties. And we do speak to them, and we do know what's going on. We do get regular reviews, and we do have occasionally where we've got to serve Section 8 on someone. It does happen, probably less than twice a year, probably. So anyway, you know, in terms of total properties, not a huge amount. We've got 7 HMOs. We have 3 holiday lets, a couple of single lets. We have a very large guest house business, which I'll come on to later, because that's quite specialist, and it might be interesting for your more experienced listeners. But at the end of the day, you know, we were financially free of our jobs on the back of 4 HMOs. So you don't need a huge amount of properties, and we remortgaged our house to get there. So I'll come on to my adventures in a minute. So important thing is to get an education. That it doesn't matter who it's with, as long as they know what they're doing and they're not just doing it for the money. They need to be investor as well.
Yeah.
I left my job in 2015 at the end of that year. Hardest thing I've ever done, however, really, really difficult. It's really hard to let go of something, you know, and that salary and that wage slip at the end of each month when you've been working for that length of time.
Yes.
I do coach a lot of people now. So I often coach people through this and encourage people to set that date in their diary by when they're going to leave, because otherwise, to be honest, it's really hard. I went down part-time for a bit. But you know, you feel like you're letting the company down, but honestly, it's the best thing I've ever done was to leave my corporate job, because I had headspace, I had time. Yes, I created my SaaS, and here's my portfolio. So the education bit of this is
before we go
important.
on, just on the subject of leaving your job and being a corporate slave, work slave, and so on. I think, because I used to be I'm a chartered accountant, and I worked in industry at senior levels. But and it was I remember when I was in that situation as an accountant, I was thinking, oh, I don't like the stress and the commute and everything. You know, maybe I should just work for myself. And it was a scary thought, because well, what if I pick up my job and don't earn any money? And it is scary. But and unfortunately, I ended up being made redundant, so the choice was made for me. But
brilliant.
And also, while I was working, I was able to buy properties and build up some property assets and equity and income that way as well. So it's made it a lot easier. But I can tell you now, the quality of life since I left my job is so much better, knowing that I can, you know, I do work a lot, but I work when I want to and not when I have to, and I can take as many breaks as I like. And now I really look forward to Monday morning. I think, great, I could, because work, it's not about work, it's about making money and doing stuff I enjoy. And it's, I love it. And it's the way, it's such a drag when it's like Christmas or bank holiday thing, or, you know, people are not going to be, I won't be able to get in touch with people for a week or something. And I'm just,
but let me tell you, and you know this as well, Keith, you know this as well. It's not all plain sailing. So I must also put the flip side and say, you know, running your own business is a huge responsibility. And when it's in property, especially if you're building your portfolio as we were at this point, you know, we borrowed a lot from investors. We borrowed from people's pension funds, and you know, deals sometimes don't quite work out as you intend. And so in my book, which again I'll talk about, in my book I put a lot of those problems in writing. I put lots of case studies with all the numbers in there, because I think there's not enough spoken about the problems and how you overcome them. Because I know people who've started out, and they may have even started on you know, on the mastermind program, and then they've given up because it got difficult. So you've got to approach this with the best education you can afford, but also with an open mind and a very, very clear reason why. Because if your reason why is big enough, then you will get through those ups and downs, the downs particularly. You will get through it, because you will be reminded by your coach or your mentor or yourself that there is a reason why I'm doing this, and that is such a big draw. So our reason why was we wanted freedom, we wanted to follow our dreams, we wanted more time, and that was about wildlife conservation for me. For John, it was sailing. But you know, obviously it's family, and everyone says, oh, I'm doing it for my family. Well, no, be selfish. You know, you're doing it for yourself and your life. And the family benefits from that. So that's another point that I often make. So get going. I mean, our strategies initially were to create cash flow. Of course they were, because we needed that monthly income to be comfortable that our mortgage was going to be paid, that we could continue to have a decent quality of life. And over a period of time start to increase the capital as well. So we are, and we have been and still are, quite highly geared. So we have a lot of mortgages, however, a lot of interest-only mortgages, but we've created assets with you know, increased value.
Yes.
So over time, cash flow is important. And then after that, you've got to say, do I pay down debt
Yes.
in the longer term? And that's sort of where we are now.
Okay.
Is moving on to, you know, creating a little bit more lump sums, if you like, from developments.
Yeah.
Where we can then have some choices. Do we put it into the next deal, or do we actually pay down debt when interest rates are going up?
Yeah.
That's a sort of way that we've been thinking, really. So I'm going to stop sharing now if you want to, because otherwise I'll be going on to the first one of the big deals that we did. What do you want to do?
Yeah. Okay. So I think so if you would just summarize so the first thing, so you did the mastermind, you got educated, then you did this first deal, and the first deal, to just summarize it, well, I think you bought something, and there was a planning gain, wasn't there? You bought it, had a big garden.
Yeah, this is the one I'll take you through now. It was the catalyst to recognizing that we could work together with other people and actually make a much better return. And again, you know, we were being mentored and coached, which made it a little bit easier. But it gave us the confidence, this first deal, that I'll just talk through now.
Yeah, so I think the first deal is the hardest one, isn't it? Because also most people,
yes, the first big deal.
First big deal, yes. Because I know when I started, I read a book. I knew property is a good thing, and I had some equity because my own house went up in value. So I could draw down some money and put it as a deposit in a buy-to-let property. So that's what I did. And then unfortunately, this was about 20 years ago, so prices were going up, and that worked. And then I got more equity in that, and I put that in another house, and then that went up, and that works when in a rising market, but markets don't always rise. So this is why it's good to learn other strategies, such as I think your first big deal, and that produced so much profit. Then it was enabled you
what you describe is really what most people do. When you raise the money and you go, I've got enough, I use my equity, and but it's a very slow way. It isn't the way that we could do it, because we just didn't have the time. We were determined that we wanted to leave our corporate jobs within a couple of years. And in fact, we set ourselves that mastermind goal of £60,000 per annum income straight away. We set that as the first 12 months. So we were pretty determined. So the slow way wasn't going to work for us. So whilst we did take equity from our home, which is quite a big decision, we took quite a lot out. I think it was more like 150, something like that, maybe nearly 200,000, which we were lucky enough to have achieved. And then you run out, because property prices, and I'm in Hampshire. Property prices in the south are really not cheap. So the choice for me was, if I want to buy locally, which is my aim, because I wanted to do the negotiating and be able to view properties, then I had to find income as funding for my deposits. So very early on, I recognized that the first couple of properties, maybe 2 or 3 properties, we could do with our own funds, but we needed to work with other people and investors. And that was really what our strength was, because we started very early. I think being a banker as well, people felt they could trust me a little bit, but also I'm very good at negotiating. And I was able to really find some really good investors. And this example I'm going to share is
go ahead.
Is a good one, I think. So we found this property. I bought a couple of properties through an agent in Southampton, and I was doing this, going to talk to them regularly. Have you got anything else that's interesting, anything that's a bit different, anything that maybe you don't know, how to value it? And this is exactly the one that they brought to me, and they said, I tell you what, we've got something that's a bit unusual, just what you told us, come and see it, because we haven't a clue what to do with it. So would you believe this house here, it's a single freehold house.
Wow.
And this is its footprint here. You can see where its land goes right down the garden. It's very large, and it's in residential road in Southampton. Half of well, a third of this property had started to be converted into flats, but for some time before. So it had got planning permission, but it had planning for 6 flats and it hadn't been finished. It had only been started something like 15, 20 years before. So it was pretty much a dump. The brothers that owned it, this was their family home, and their elderly parents sort of still owned it. But when they died, they were left with, what do we do with it? The rest of this house here was their family home. They then decided to rent it on a single let basis, but it was pretty horrible inside. So they let it to somebody on benefits who was a hoarder. So I'd love to show you the pictures, but it was pretty awful inside as well. They put it on the market. They wanted £1 million, I think. No, $500,000. They wanted $500,000 for it. We recognised that not only was it not mortgageable, but it had a huge garden, and it also had planning in place already. And if you've got a good education, you know that if it's partly converted, you don't need to go back to the planning. It's already got planning, so happy days. So we spotted that straight away, and this lovely agent said, I said to him, look, don't worry, we'll look at it, we'll see what we think it's worth. And he said, well, I'm not going to show anyone around it then. So he put it on the market, but he didn't show anyone around. So it's a great thing where build relationships is really important. So the opportunities, as a lot of your people listening would probably see, freehold to leasehold, you can create those 6 flats because it's got planning to do so. Huge refurbishment needed, however, because it's a very old property and it had problems with it. All its wall ties were bowed. And there was some roof issues. So a few things needed to be done to it. But it had planning gain opportunities in the garden as well. So with those 3 opportunities, we thought, yes, it's going to work. We just need to find the money and we need to get some plans together. So this is the funding. This is what we did. So it was on the market for $500,000. We bought it for 350. They didn't. We tried to negotiate a purchase lease option and all those sorts of different things. And in the end, we negotiated a delay a little bit while we sorted the leases out. We set ourselves a budget to refurb it of 160,000, and plus costs. Total GDV we estimated was at least 660. So you can see it was a little bit tight. And we had no funds available.
The reason you were willing to, so it was on the market for 500,000, but they had to sell it to you at such a large discount because no one else wanted to buy it, because they realised it would require so much work to renovate, and they weren't aware of all these sort of upsides with the planning you're talking about.
The interesting thing was we were able to talk to the owners through the agents. Now the owners were a couple of brothers. They were retired. They weren't interested at all in the property, and what was driving them was they wanted certainty. They didn't get on. They wanted certainty of sale, so they didn't want to mess about with this purchase lease option and earn some money whilst we sorted it out. They didn't want that. But also their communication was very poor. So one of them was in France, and he'd stopped communicating for a couple of months at a time, and it would all go quiet, which was a bit scary. The agent stuck with us, however. The agent recognized that we knew what we were talking about, that they could trust us. And so what they didn't want to do was go out to the market and show it to lots of people and have this frenzy, because they wanted an easy life as well. So it was really interesting. But we built trust with the owners. We were very patient with the owners. We wanted time to actually, from a tax point of view and stamp duty point of view, was to create the leases before we bought it. So we bought it as a freehold and 6 leases. We spent the legals to make that happen. But it saved us a lot of money in the long run. And I won't go into that now, but this is the outcome. We actually created 6 flats, luxury flats. we took some of the garden away, so we actually fenced it off, so it still had some communal garden space, but we still had then the back of the garden available. Our sources of finance were private investors, so investors who had lent to us before, but also investors who were happy to do a joint venture, because this was our first big project, and we hadn't got the experience necessarily that some investors would want. So these JV partners came in eyes wide open, knew that this is our first one, came in and helped us. So we had an accountant, we had a solicitor, we had just a bunch of people that liked us, that knew us, that just a handful. And we'd have regular meetings. One ran the bank account, someone else ran paid the bills. It was just really good joint venture. We borrowed from people's SIPs and SASs as well, which was more sort of arm's length. But yeah, we ended up buying it for that price. The refurb cost more, so 210, not 160, because there was a basement and we hadn't appreciated that needed a bit of work on it. Of course, things took longer and we came across issues. We were taking down walls, we were taking down chimneys, and those of course are fraught with difficulty and cost. However, it wasn't too bad, because at the end of the day, our GDV went up. So the value of these flats was higher than we anticipated. So that worked really well. Lots of issues along the way, of course. We still own one of these flats. We've got the 2-bed show flat that we still own. This is the rear of the property now. And have I got that's a different one. So the front, it looks quite nice now. We've got the sort of downlighters, and we've got really nice front doors for people to use, and transformed this building. So it was a good first project to do. And that's great. So that was the catalyst. It was a little bit stressful, but because we were JVing with the builder as well, he took all the pain out of it. Of course. We communicated with the investors very, very well, and that is so important. Long story.
That's fantastic for your first. I mean, it does sound quite advanced. Obviously you've done stuff before, education, and you were partnering with people and you were doing, but it sounds like incredible. Really, you just got a lot of things. I mean, I know you went over a bit on the refurbs, but pretty much you everything just all like gel together and it all works. So I mean, that's incredible.
I think it's quite risky as a JV. It is risky, but we were reducing our risk because of the joint venture. Because if we'd made some losses on it, we would have shared that loss with the investors, and they were very clear about that too. We were going into this completely honestly, and that's what you've got to do. If I was someone else starting out now, I probably would have done maybe a house to 2 flats or something like that, a little bit easier, a little less risky.
So this is when so we've got sort of quarter of an hour left, so this is where I want to focus now. So you obviously did it your way, did this incredible deal. We had like a bit of luck, and but it turns out really well, and that gave you the confidence and the experience to then go on and do all this other stuff. But if someone was just starting out with no money, what would you recommend as their path to
well you can't do property investing with no money, and that's what I say. I know other people, good marketing people, will say, oh, it's fine, you can do rent to rent or whatever, but you always have to have a buffer. You've got to have a cash buffer, you've got to have something to fall back on. So if you've got equity in a property that you own, that's the cheapest and quickest way to get some cash in your pocket. So that's my advice initially. Get a good education, so start learning. It doesn't have to cost you a huge amount. My online program is book. But my book is like 10 pounds. My program is 695, and that includes coaching. So you don't have to spend tens of thousands as we did on Mastermind. Just start at your own pace and start to build that confidence. And then if you can find an asset that will give you a return, and work out the return on investment, so that you're confident that, even if there's a couple of voids in a year that you'll still make a profit, then start very simply, single let, something manageable, and take it from there, really. Because if you can work with other people's money, but you've got to be confident and experienced. So when you're starting out, it's not that simple.
No, I mean, I think the key to accelerating everything is to work with investors and other people's money, isn't it? Because it's so slow the way that I did it, and with a fast rising market for a few years, it's quite fast, but that's not sustainable. We might go for periods of drought, but if you have working with, because the point is with investors, where do they put their money? Stocks and shares can go down, and the bank, hardly gives any money at all. So and pension, if they have a pension fund, if they buy an annuity, that only gives like a few percent. When I looked at the rates for annuities, I was shocked at how low they were. And then so if you have pension, you buy an annuity, and then when you die, all that money's gone. Whereas if you put that money into property, then it, you can pass.
I mean, property is an asset, and as long as you're buying in the right location, and you've done your due diligence and you understand this stuff, then that asset can give you recurring income, but also capital growth in the long term. As long as you don't have to sell it at a particular time, you've got that asset behind you. So people ask me, well, how do you ask people for money? Because I could never do that. It's like politics, and you don't talk about these things at the dinner table, do you? So people say, well, how do you meet people that might have money, and how do you start? So I think this is a good lesson just for people listening, because this is where people give up and they go, oh no, I couldn't do that. It's all a scam. And you go, no, it's not, because all I do, and this is what I learned, and this is what I teach other people, is just to tell people what you're doing, just to pass the time of day with people, see who's interested in the subject. That's all it is, People are talking about their money, they're talking about interest rates, and everyone's negative. So they go, oh, isn't it terrible? My stocks and shares are worth X now. And so you start having the conversation and say, well, look, I'm doing this thing in property, and I'm able to, get quite a good return on my money. Obviously, because I've got knowledge and I'm learning and I'm doing it properly, then, I'm reducing my risk. So I usually say to people, look, come and have a look at what I do, or come and see some examples of how I do what I do. But also the important thing is read a book. I gave them Simon Zucchi's book. Now people can read my book, and they go, oh, it's not that difficult. No, it's not really difficult. So when you explain to people why I can get a return on investment in double digits, they go, okay, I get that. So if I was talking to someone with money in the bank who doesn't know anything about property investing as such, then you talk about, well, what do they want and need? What do they want their money to do for them in the future? And I say that I'm always looking for investors. And my investors could be cash flow investors, because early days you always need cash for refurbishments. So I'll talk about cash flow. I'm always looking for cash flow investments, which is for a shorter period of time at a sort of relatively low rate of interest, but I don't talk about interest rates at that point. I talk about anything in between that and maybe joint venturing. So I say, look, if somebody said to me, I'm quite happy to tie my money up for a few years, and they know me well enough, and they go, look, if you want to have that money, I'm happy if it sits somewhere, and just let me know what you're doing with it, and I'm happy to do that on a loan basis. And the first person that I borrowed from, interestingly enough, was someone I didn't know at all initially. He was my gas boiler man.
Oh really?
Coming to service the boiler, would you believe? And I thought, I had my coach's conversation in my mind, which is always tell everyone what you're doing, it doesn't matter who they are. So I chatted to him, it's good I've got a day off to do, because you're coming to do the boiler, because actually I want time to do my property stuff. And his ears pricked up and said, oh, I go to PIN meetings. I'm like,
really?
oh,
Okay.
been to more PIN meetings than I had at that point. Right. And just because it sparked an interest, he then said, look, I'd love to talk more about it. and I showed him around one of my HMOs. I was looking for investors at that point. We did cash flow loan. I think it was like £8,000, nothing, not a lot of money. And I said to him, what sort of interest rate would you be comfortable with on a short-term basis? And he said, well, I'm getting 1 or 2% because he had one of these offset mortgages.
Yes.
I'm getting something for it, but maybe 3 or 4% would be good.
Yes.
I'm like, well, that suits me really well.
Sure.
And I think that's about right.
Yeah.
So you don't have to offer people huge amounts.
Yeah.
And if you do, they would run a mile.
Sure.
If I'd said to him, I could pay you 10%, which actually I don't think is right.
Yes.
Then I don't think he would have lent to me.
Yes.
So there you go. So all you need to do, and read my book, but have a chat with me another time if you want to get to this point. You just need to be yourself and talk about stuff, about property, and no more than that. And then if people express an interest, show them what you do, give them an example, show them my book, show them why property is a good way to invest. But if they don't want to do it themselves, which most of them don't, then they benefit from your knowledge and you benefit from their funds. And it's a win-win. They then get a return on their money that's more than they get now, and you get the ability to do another deal. So I don't think it's difficult now, but when I was learning, it was really scary. It was really difficult.
Oh, the first, if you've not done it before. Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Because you don't know what's going to happen, do you? I remember my first buy-to-let. Yeah, it was sort of terrifying. But and you always think, oh, well, the market's about to crash. But
or your first investor, and the sort of things that they come up with as risks. They'll say, oh my goodness, what happens if the market crashes?
Yes.
We've always got an answer for that, because we know that if we've bought in the right location, there's high rental demand, and you've got tenants paying you every month. Their risk is if the tenant loses their job and the tenant can no longer pay you. Okay, so that's the risk, isn't it? But if it's in an area of high demand, if that tenant has to leave, you can replace them.
Of course.
So the risk is not about the market crashing in terms of values. It's about whether you can, have a tenant to pay the rent or not.
Yes.
So it's a very different risk. And from an investor's point of view, they need to know that they can trust you, that you've got other assets as well in the background, like a home, and that if something went wrong, you would be able to pay them back. And that's, again, that's an open, honest conversation. And we always have loan agreements. We always put things in writing, whether we know this person really well or not. We will always sign a document that says this is what we're agreeing to. These are the terms. If we don't pay back, the penalty interest rate doubles. If the person wants to pull out, what happens if they want their money back early? All these things. They're all risks, and you can overcome them just by having good conversations and good communication. That's what it's all about. Yeah,
I mean, that sounds great. So so you mentioned to start off with, you could maybe try doing a single let, but then you mentioned all these other things like HMOs, guest houses, service accommodation. So what would you advise as the next step after a single let? Was it HMO? Is it a development, or is it service accommodation?
Well, it depends on the marketplace where you're investing and how much money you've got. If you've got investor funds, it's quite easy, because if you pay them back and they're happy with you, they're usually quite happy to lend to you again. So it means that you've got some backup there. So I think for us, when we found that HMOs were getting harder because there was more competition in the market.
Okay.
And we felt that we've got our base of income from a source that we were comfortable with, but actually doing more of them it wasn't really interesting. And I felt that we needed to diversify a little bit. Yeah. So having done those flats, we thought, well, we did sell them except for one of them, and we kept the land. So we were always looking at what could we do with the land and planning permission. So it was a natural thing for us to venture into that development world and get some more education. So we actually did some education on how do you assess development opportunities. It was with Richard and Brynley Little, brilliant people, very knowledgeable, and assessing land and conversions and things, because it's so risky, it's really important to get good knowledge. So for me, that made sense. But for other people, diversifying could mean going into just a different strategy, maybe a different location. So holiday lets has been really fascinating over the last few years, because people go, oh no, what did you do during COVID? Well, we had really good occupancy even during COVID, and that was because the market changed. So rather than people coming on holiday because they weren't allowed to do that,
that's right,
what we had was that people had sold their houses and hadn't bought because there weren't many properties for sale. So what we did, people then stayed in our holiday lets for maybe a few months at a time, and between houses, really, because they're fully furnished. So there's a huge market there for short-term letting, because normally you can only have an AST for 6 to 12 months. So people didn't want that. They wanted to be able to find their new property and have somewhere that was all furnished they could just move into and move out of. So we did really well with that. And then contractors coming down and working, because contractors couldn't stay in hotels because hotels were closed. But it was safer, and from a COVID point of view, better if their little group of workers stayed together as a bubble. So they rented some of our houses as a little bubble, and they'd come down from Leeds or Nottingham in this instance, and with their white van, and they'd rent one of our holiday lets. So it was really good because we had longer term rentals there. It was less money per day, but actually a better occupancy overall. So serviced apartments, my course covers all of the strategies, the pros and cons, but holiday lets and things can be a lot of hard work. And I can hear people are shouting now at me going, oh yes, but, yes, but I haven't got the time, and oh yes, but don't they trash the place and steal everything? No, they don't actually. We're very careful. We don't leave valuables, obviously, in our houses, but we do want them to feel homely and comfortable. So the secret, if you still want freedom of time, is to find somebody local who you know and trust, who's good at marketing, who will be able to manage the properties on your behalf. And if somebody local, because when there's a problem with the Wi-Fi or the washing machine breaks, they can just sort out those issues there and then because they're local. Now we pay our managers on our serviced accommodation. We pay them a percentage of the turnover, so they're incentivized to get good returns because it impacts their income. Now, obviously, we pay for things. We obviously pay the bills. We pay for the laundry to be serviced, and they and the cleaners, of course. But having somebody on site who can just check that everything's been done properly, who perhaps drops the bottle of wine into the fridge, for the next guest, and also somebody who is good at doing Airbnb or whatever platform you want them to be on. That's really important. So our lady Vanessa is fantastic. She is a super host on Airbnb for her own holiday let, and what she does is she puts ours on as hers. And
So you teamed up with someone who already has her own holiday lets, so she knows what she's doing, and that
she just has that's right. So it's really good. So the theme in everything I talk about to people, and quite often from the questions is about people. This business, it's not about money. It's not about
I mean,
property.
that was something that people. Simon always used to say, property is a people business.
It is.
I mean, I think it can. I mean, I think it can be. I think some people, if you've got a lot of money, or they can do it just on their own. But I think to really to work well and to accelerate faster, I think it definitely helps if you if you are more of a people person and you network and you work out your strengths and weaknesses and partner with other people, both in terms of mindset and strategy and location and assets and cash and all the different things that different people have got different quantities of.
And it takes time, it takes time to meet people, and PIN meetings are a really good place. Property investor network meetings, I always suggest those are quite a nice place to meet people. Social media, to a point, can be a good place to connect.
Because we met on LinkedIn.
We did, we did. I use LinkedIn quite a lot.
And you're always posting on Facebook. I go to Facebook, Bronwen says this, Bronwen says that. So, which is great. So, it's where
I love to help people learn, and it's a big passion for me. I don't have to have my education business. John's not bothered with it. He doesn't enjoy that.
And I think if you come from that space of helping people, it's more enjoyable, and it's just good karma. It's just great for the world. It's just great to help people. It's great for the other person. You feel better, and it also creates trust as well. And also people know they think this person's trying to help me. It's just a totally different.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit, Keith. There's a limit. So I'm very generous with my time usually. But there is a limit. So what I've created is an online program, so it's easy to access. It's 1 hour video webinars. So when I was teaching Mastermind with Simon locally, people had to ship up once a month, and it was a whole day, and then they had homework and they ship up the next month, and it costs a lot of money for people. So what I created with Simon's blessing is something where you don't have to ship up at a certain time. You can go online and watch these modules. There's 23 of them. You can watch them whenever you want to, with a glass of wine in hand usually, and listen to some of my key points about every aspect of investing. And then I invite some experts like tax advisors, mortgage brokers, insurance brokers, all these people, because I'm not experts in all this stuff. So I bring them in, interview them, just as you're doing with me, and I say, right, what are the key things people need to be aware of today, up to date? So making it accessible learning is really important for me, because then I don't have to spend lots of time giving my time away, which is quite expensive.
Of course.
So people buy my program for £600, and then if they want coaching with me separately, then that's a fairly reasonable hourly rate. And then I know what they know already, and I say, look, make sure you've watched module 3 before we speak, because that's what we need to talk about. So I've made learning more accessible, I think. And this was 5 years ago, before Zoom became the normal, modus operandi. I do my coaching on Zoom, and always have done. Because John and I traveled the world in 2017. And so I set up my business then to teach, because I wanted something to take with me and to have wherever I was, and feel that I was still contributing.
That's great. So I think we ought to wind up there, as I respect everyone's time. So, but your website is propertyinvestingfoundation.com, isn't it?
I'll send you a link to put in the show notes if you like. Because the links are really important, because the link will come through to the page where it talks about the program,
have a special
got my
page,
video, and so I have a special page. And then people can watch I've got a free webinar that's an hour long, all about the myths of property investing and how to overcome them and all that. So I'll send you that link.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And then people can contact me through social media, usually, just like you did. And if people have got any specific questions about what we've talked about today, they can book a chat with me, a free chat with me for half an hour. And it's very easy to pick up where we've left off, really, if people have got questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, lovely to meet you, and I hope you have a lovely day in the sunshine, and hope to see you again very, very soon. So
indeed. Thanks, Keith.
So bye for now. So